I, female, 28, think my boyfriend's male, 30, family is trying to set him up with someone else behind my back. Throwaway, because Luke knows my main account. So I've been dating Luke for almost 3 years now. We met at my friend Jess's birthday party. She went to college with Luke's roommate. It was honestly one of those weird love at first sight things. I know how that sounds. We just clicked immediately and talked for like 4 hours straight that night. He's smart and funny and treats me really well, which is why this whole situation is making me question everything. Some background. We come from pretty different worlds. My dad's a construction worker and my mom's a nurse, and we were always comfortable growing up, but definitely not wealthy. Luke's family is like old money. Like his great-grandfather started some company that's still in the family. They belong to country clubs. They have a vacation house in the Hamptons, that whole thing. When we first started dating, I was super nervous about meeting his family because, what would they think about someone like me? But Luke always assured me they would love me because he loved me. And honestly, for the most part, they've been fine. Like not super warm, but not outright hostile either. There have definitely been some awkward moments though. Luke's sister Catherine, female, 33, has always been weird with me. She's polite enough, but there's this coldness there. She's made comments before like, "You're not what I expected for Luke," or "It's so interesting that Luke chose someone so different." And she always does this little pause before different, like she's searching for a word that won't get her in trouble. But whatever, sisters are protective, I get it. I thought things were basically fine between our families until this weekend. So Luke's parents were celebrating their 35th wedding anniversary and had this big party at their country club. I had to switch shifts at work. I'm a veterinary assistant, to get the day off, and I spent way too much money on a new dress because I wanted to look nice. It was definitely more than I should have spent with rent coming up, but I wanted to make a good impression. When we got there, everything seemed normal at first. Luke's parents were being their usual polite but distant selves. But then Catherine showed up with this woman named Irene, female, 29, who she introduced as the daughter of Dad's golf buddy. And immediately I got this weird feeling. First of all, Irene looked like she stepped out of a freaking catalog. Perfect hair, perfect dress, that probably cost more than my monthly rent, perfect everything. And Catherine spent the entire night making sure Irene was always next to Luke. At dinner, she literally rearranged place cards so Irene would sit by Luke instead of me. I ended up between Luke's grandfather, who's hard of hearing, and his 14-year-old cousin. But the photo thing was what really got to me. So we're all mingling after dinner, and Catherine announces it's time for family photos. I went to stand next to Luke like normal, but Catherine asked me to take the photos instead, reminding me that I mentioned being good with cameras. Luke's mom added that they wanted just family first. Just family first. We've been together 3 years, but okay, whatever. So I step aside to take the photo, and then Catherine literally pulls Irene into the photo, saying she was practically family anyway. Luke looked uncomfortable, but he didn't say anything, not one word. I took several photos, my hands were shaking, and then Luke's mom asked for one more with Irene standing next to Luke. Catherine, who I'm pretty sure is actually Satan, commented that they looked so good together. I swear I almost threw the phone at her perfectly highlighted head. Throughout the night, I kept overhearing these little conversations. Catherine telling her aunt how Irene and Luke would make such beautiful children, and how Irene's family business would pair perfectly with our company. I heard Luke's uncle saying something about securing the family's future, which I thought was just normal rich people talk, but now I'm thinking was about Luke and Irene. And the comments. Oh my God, the comments. His grandmother asked if I planned to improve my wardrobe when I became more established, whatever that means. His cousin remarked on how Irene and Luke share the same values. We apparently don't. And Catherine, who again is Satan, directly asked me if I understood what it takes to be part of this family. Like it was some kind of test I was failing. At one point, I spent like 30 minutes hiding in the bathroom trying not to cry because Luke's mom had pulled me aside to help in the kitchen. None of the other women were asked to help, by the way. And while we were putting desserts on plates, she casually mentioned that she knew Luke cared about me, but wondered if I might want what's best for Luke in the long run. What does that even mean? When I finally found Luke alone, I asked him what was going on. He just said his sister was just being Catherine, like that explained everything. I pointed out the obvious setup with Irene, and he laughed and said his family was just being meddling as usual. I asked if he was uncomfortable with how they were treating me, and he said they mean well and it's just their way. I kept pressing for him to actually acknowledge what was happening, and he got irritated and said I was making too much of it. Then Catherine, of course, interrupted us, saying Luke needed to help with something, and he just left with her, saying, "We'll talk later," over his shoulder. We barely spoke on the drive home. When I tried to bring it up again, he said I was overreacting and that his family is just traditional and protective. He made it sound like I was being paranoid for thinking there was anything weird about the whole Irene situation. Am I crazy? Am I actually overreacting? I know his family has always been a bit standoffish with me, but this felt like something else entirely, like they were auditioning my replacement right in front of me. And the worst part is Luke doesn't seem to think it's a big deal at all. Edit. Since so many people are asking, no, Luke and Irene don't have any history that I know of. According to him, they've met a few times at family events, but were never close. And yes, Luke knows how much the dress cost because he complimented it, and I joked about eating ramen for the rest of the month. I didn't expect this to blow up like this. To clarify, Luke has stood up for me in smaller situations before, like when his dad made a comment about my college being one of those state schools. Luke did correct him, but with bigger stuff like this, he tends to just brush it off as that's just how they are. A lot of people are asking about Irene's reaction to all this. She was weirdly neutral, like she was perfectly polite to me, but definitely went along with Catherine's maneuvering all night. I couldn't tell if she was an active participant or just going with the flow. Now for the first update. First, I just want to say thank you to everyone who commented on my last post. I honestly wasn't expecting so many responses, and it actually helped me feel less crazy about the whole situation. And yeah, to the people who said I should talk to Luke directly about it, you were right. After that anniversary party disaster, I waited until we got home the next day to talk to him about everything. I was dreading it all night and barely slept. I kept rehearsing what I wanted to say over and over, but it still came out all wrong. I started by telling him how uncomfortable the whole party made me feel. He sighed and said his family can be a bit much sometimes. I told him this wasn't about them being a bit much. This was about Catherine trying to set him up with another woman right in front of me, and the whole Irene situation, and how his entire family treated me like I wasn't his girlfriend of 3 years. He said Catherine's just looking out for him and has always been protective. So I asked if that meant Catherine thought Irene was better for him than me. He hesitated for way too long before saying that's not what he meant, but he didn't actually answer my question. I kept pushing him to give me a straight answer about Catherine's intentions because the she's just protective excuse was BS. He finally admitted that Catherine has always had a specific vision for his future. His exact words, a specific vision. Like he's not even a person. So I asked him directly if that vision includes me. He said, of course, but he wouldn't look me in the eyes when he said it. Red flag, red flag, red flag. But I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt. My mom has always told me I'm too trusting since I was a teenager. She watched me go through almost the exact same thing with my high school boyfriend, whose parents thought I wasn't good enough for their precious son because my dad worked construction. That relationship ended after 2 years when he finally admitted his parents would never accept me and he couldn't handle being caught in the middle. I should have remembered that before dating another guy with a family like this. Anyway, I tried to move past it, but over the next few weeks, weird stuff kept happening. Luke was texting way more than usual, and I thought maybe he was just stressed about work. His company is doing some big merger thing. But then one night, he was in the shower, and his phone kept buzzing on the coffee table. And I know I shouldn't have looked, but I did. And it was all these messages from Catherine about Irene. Stuff like Irene really enjoyed seeing him at his dad's office and reminding him about taking her to a restaurant to discuss the proposal. The proposal. What proposal? Was I losing my mind? Then the next day I found a business card for Irene's family company in his jacket pocket, and her personal number was handwritten on the back, with a little heart next to it, a heart. I confronted him about the messages and the card, and he got defensive saying I was overreacting, and the proposal was about some business thing between their families, and the heart was just how Irene writes, which is the lamest excuse ever. I completely trust Luke. I do. But I've also started checking his location on my phone. I know that's bad, but I can't help it. Then a few days after our argument about the card, his mom Jen called me directly. She invited me to lunch, just the two of us, and said she wanted to get to know me better. I spent hours getting ready for this lunch. I really thought maybe this was a chance to clear the air and show her I'm not some trash person who's not good enough for her son. We met at this super fancy restaurant where the menu didn't even have prices. She was being all nice and asking about my job and my family, but there was this weird feeling the whole time. Like she was interviewing me for a position I wasn't going to get. Then about halfway through lunch, she started talking about how Luke has important family responsibilities. I nodded and said I understood and supported his family commitments. And she was like, well, these responsibilities include carrying on family traditions. I still didn't fully get what she was implying. Then she mentioned how Irene's family has known theirs for generations. That's when I started to realize where this was going. And then she just said it. She looked me right in the eyes and told me she thinks we both know I'm not what they envisioned for Luke. I couldn't speak. Then she offered to help make things easier if I decided to step aside. She actually suggested that finding someone more suitable would be better for everyone. She meant Irene. She was telling me to break up with Luke so he could be with Irene. I left the restaurant crying. I called Luke immediately, but he was in meetings and couldn't talk. So I just went home and spent the whole afternoon going between being absolutely furious and wondering if maybe they were right. Maybe I'm not good enough for Luke. Maybe someone like Irene would be better for him. Luke finally called me back that evening and I told him everything his mom said. He seemed torn, saying his mom went too far but also that she has his best interests at heart. What the actual F? I was so frustrated that he couldn't just firmly stand up for our relationship. And the weirdest part, during our whole conversation, I could hear Catherine's voice in the background, even though he told me he was calling from the office at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday. Things have gotten even worse this past week. I've gotten texts from like 5 different family members, all somehow mentioning Irene. His cousin Chris reached out to check on me, which I thought was actually nice until he started saying stuff like, sometimes love means letting go, and Luke has always had certain expectations placed on him. Gross. And then yesterday I was scrolling through Instagram and saw that Luke's aunt had posted pictures from a family dinner at his parents' house. Guess who was there? Irene and Luke. A dinner he never even mentioned to me. I'm just done. So yesterday I told Luke this had to stop. Either he clearly establishes boundaries with his family regarding our relationship, or I need to reconsider our entire future together. He looked panicked and promised he'd talk to his family, but asked for time to handle it delicately. I told him he has 1 week. But honestly, I don't know if our relationship can survive this. 3 years together, and I'm still being treated like I'm temporary. Like I'm just some obstacle in the way of their perfect rich people merger with Irene's family. I really thought Luke was different. I thought what we had was strong enough, but now I'm not sure about anything. Now for the second update. First, thank you to everyone who commented on my last post. A lot of you said I needed to stand my ground and not let his family walk all over me. And you were right. Some of you predicted Luke wouldn't actually stand up to his family. And well, you were right about that too. I really wish you hadn't been though. So during that whole week I was like barely sleeping or eating. My coworker Kim actually pulled me aside at work and was like, "You look like absolute hell. Thanks Kim, and offered to cover some of my shifts if I needed personal time. I probably should have taken her up on it because I was basically exhausted. I accidentally gave Mrs. Peterson's cat the wrong medication and my boss had to fix it. Thankfully the cat was fine, but I felt terrible about it. Anyway, about 3 days after I gave Luke the ultimatum, he told me he had this big serious talk with his family about respecting his relationship choices and how they needed to back off with the whole Irene thing. He said they understood and would stop interfering. And I guess I wanted to believe him because he started being super attentive, like bringing me flowers for no reason and suggesting weekend trips and stuff. But looking back now, I realize it was probably just guilt or trying to distract me or something. I mean, people don't just completely change overnight, right? I completely believed Luke was handling things. Okay, that's a lie. I totally didn't. Whenever he was in the shower, I was checking his phone. I know that's bad. I've never been the jealous, snooping girlfriend type before, but this whole situation made me crazy. And yeah, I still saw texts from Catherine mentioning Irene, but they were more subtle now. Like Dad mentioned seeing Irene at the club, or Mom wondered if you'd looked at those proposal documents Irene's father sent over. Still sketchy, but nothing I could directly call out. But then the craziest thing happened. Like 3 days after Luke supposedly confronted his family, I got this message on Instagram from some woman named Lisa. She introduced herself as Luke's ex-girlfriend from 4 years ago. And my first thought was like, great, this is exactly what I need right now. More trouble from an ex. But then I read her message and I was really shocked. She basically said she had experienced almost identical treatment from Luke's family when they were dating. Catherine bringing in a more suitable woman, his parents making comments about her not fitting in, and eventually Luke just giving in to the pressure. She said she saw me in pictures with Luke on social media and wanted to warn me because no one warned her. I decided to meet Lisa for coffee, even though it felt super weird, but I needed to know if she was telling the truth. So we met at this little coffee shop near my work, and she was actually really nice. Not at all what I expected. She apologized right away for reaching out, but said she felt like she had to. I thanked her, but told her I was still kind of skeptical about her motives. I mean, who wouldn't be? She explained that she saw my photo with Luke on Catherine's Instagram, where Catherine had tagged both of us, but put this super passive-aggressive caption like, Luke bringing friends to family events is always interesting, or something like that. And Lisa recognized the pattern immediately. When she started describing how Catherine orchestrated her breakup with Luke, it was like she was reading from a script of my life for the past month. Catherine introduced her to some woman named Rebecca, who was from another wealthy family. The parents started making comments about Lisa not understanding their world. Even the aunt and uncle got involved. It was exactly what was happening to me. I asked her why she didn't fight harder for the relationship. Like, if she really loved Luke, why would she just give up? I know this was kind of harsh, but I was defensive. And that's when she told me something shocking. She said Luke had promised to stand up to his family multiple times, but he never actually did. He would tell her he talked to them, but nothing would change. And eventually she found out he was seeing Rebecca behind her back, while still telling Lisa he loved her. I defended Luke, saying he was different now, that our relationship was stronger. God, I sound so stupid saying this now. And then Lisa showed me her phone. She had texts from another ex-girlfriend of Luke's with almost the same exact story. Different girl that Catherine approved of. Same pattern of Luke promising to stand up to his family and then caving. I just sat there in silence for like 5 minutes. I couldn't even process what this meant. Like, was this just what Luke does? Gets with girls his family doesn't approve of, and then lets them push him into relationships with women they choose. Has he been doing this on purpose? Lisa was actually really supportive. She said she wished someone had warned her, and that's why she reached out to me. She wasn't trying to cause problems, she just thought I deserved to know what might be coming. After meeting Lisa, I decided to make one final attempt to understand if Luke was capable of putting our relationship first, so I invited him over to talk. I was super calm about it. On the outside at least. Inside, I was freaking out. I asked him directly if he actually spoke to his family like he promised. He claimed he had this good talk with them and they were going to back off with the Irene thing. His exact words were something like, "They understand how important you are to me," but there was something off about how he said it. So I mentioned my meeting with Lisa and what she told me. He got immediately defensive, calling Lisa bitter and obsessed with him, and saying she was just trying to cause problems. But the way he reacted just made me more suspicious. I pointed out that there seemed to be a pattern with multiple ex-girlfriends. Like, this wasn't just a one-time thing with Lisa. This was his MO. He dismissed it as coincidence and misunderstanding and said his past relationships had nothing to do with us, but he wouldn't look me in the eye when he said it. So I asked him directly, if it came down to it, would he choose me over his family's wishes? And he hesitated. He actually sat there and hesitated before saying, "It's not that simple." I kept pushing for a straight answer, and he suggested we compromise by attending weekly dinners with Irene present to keep the peace. What? How is that a compromise? That's literally just giving his family exactly what they want while pretending he's standing up for me. That conversation made it crystal clear that Luke would never truly stand up to his family. He would always choose their approval over my feelings. And then, because this situation wasn't crazy enough already, the next day Catherine texted me directly. She suggested we talk woman to woman about what's best for Luke. Part of me wanted to tell her to F off, but another part of me wanted to finally confront this situation head on. So I agreed to meet her. We met at this super fancy cafe where a coffee costs like $9. Who pays that much for coffee? And surprise, surprise, she brought Irene with her, because apparently I needed to be ambushed to make this whole thing even more uncomfortable. Catherine started the conversation by suggesting we be honest about the situation. I was actually glad she said that because honesty was exactly what was needed at that point. She launched into this whole speech about Luke's responsibilities to the family legacy, while Irene just sat there looking uncomfortable and barely speaking. Honestly, I felt kind of bad for Irene at this point. She looked like she wanted to disappear. And then Catherine revealed what this was really about. Apparently their parents are facing some major financial difficulties, like the kind that could ruin them. And guess whose family could save their company through a merger? Irene's. It suddenly all made sense. This wasn't just about social status or me not being from their world. This was about money. Luke was literally being used as a business pawn. I asked Catherine if Luke knew he was being traded like a business asset. She got super defensive, saying it was what's best for everyone and that Luke understands his responsibilities. I'd had enough at that point. I stood up and asked Irene if she really wanted to marry someone who was being traded like a business asset. Irene looked absolutely startled. I don't think anyone had put it to her that bluntly before. Catherine tried to regain control of the conversation, but I was done. I told them I felt sorry for both of them, that Luke deserved to choose his own life, and Irene deserved someone who actually loved her. I left that cafe feeling strangely empowered. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could see everything clearly. I went directly to Luke's apartment and ended our relationship. I told him I deserved someone who would put me first, not someone who would let his family control every aspect of his life. He seemed genuinely shocked, like he couldn't believe I was actually walking away. The aftermath was pretty much what you'd expect. Luke called and texted multiple times, begging for another chance. Catherine sent me these thinly veiled threats about regretting my decision. Luke's father actually attempted to offer me money to walk away quietly, like this was some kind of business transaction. The check he tried to give me was for $25,000, which I guess was supposed to be flattering but was actually just insulting. I didn't do anything dramatic for revenge. I simply refused to participate in their manipulation anymore. And I did forward Catherine's texts and details of the financial situation to Irene, suggesting she deserved to know what kind of family she might be marrying into. Okay, so maybe that was a little bit of revenge, but she deserved to know. About 3 weeks later, I heard through mutual friends that Irene had also backed away from the arrangement. Apparently, she told her parents she wasn't interested in being part of a business merger disguised as a marriage. So now Luke's family is scrambling to find another solution to their financial problems. The most surprising part? Luke finally moved out of his parents' guest house and got his own apartment. Our mutual friend Jess told me he's been talking about looking for a job outside the family business. Maybe this was the push he needed to start breaking away from his family's influence. I hope so, for his sake. Sometimes I do miss Luke. We had 3 good years together, and there were lots of happy memories. But then I remember how close I came to a lifetime of being manipulated and diminished by his family, and I know I made the right decision.